that shows it truly is good news. First, we need to share unhesitatingly our joy and excitement over who God is. God is our creator who created life out of love, delight, and pure goodness. The creation account is an incredible love story where we see God expressing joy and wonder over his creation, like an artist delighting in his masterpiece. That is a far more compelling narrative than the writ secular ones that says the world is the result of a violent cataclysmic accident. Creation is good. Not only is the creation story magnificent and moving, but it also provides a logical foundation and explanation for how to understand reality. In Genesis, God created the world and declared it good. God didn't say the earth was evil or worthless. Neither did he say it was divine and to be worshipped. The implications of this are massive. The creation story provides the reason for why we care for the earth and must never abuse it. It also shows us that we are not to mistakenly worship nature or objects, but rather the God who created all things. Creation is God's work. God created human life and called it very good. All human life is precious to God. Every human being bears God's image. That is why we are to treat human beings with dignity, respect, and love. It is why, for instance, we view racism as evil. The creation story also tells us that human beings were created to live in peace and harmony, not strife and chaos. The meaning of life from the biblical perspective is not about power, but about love, not about transactions, but about relationships. That is quite different from the modern secular narrative. One way to communicate the relevance of the creation story to skeptics is to point to the evidence of our God-imprinted natures. Let's look into our concern for justice, equality, and human rights. One of the remarkable aspects of the creation narrative is that it makes sense of what most non-Christians already believe, that all lives matter. The secular narrative tells us that life is meaningless. So how can an atheist logically explain why human life must be valued? The creation story, on the other hand, provides the reason why we feel passionate about justice, fairness, and racial equality is because we are made in God's image. The Creator God is a righteous God who loves his creation and who stands firmly opposed to all forms of injustice. And he made us to have the same attitude, and not the attitude of our own, but he made us to have the same attitude. Our response to beauty. When we read of the beauty in paradise in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we see that God is the source of beauty, and he created human beings to recognize and respond to beauty as well. For example, the first recorded poem in the Bible is when God introduced Adam to Eve. Adam was overcome with wonder and awe. Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, "This is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." Once again, the challenge for skeptics is how to explain their response of wonder when it goes against their secular worldview that there is no ultimate meaning in life. An atheist friend of mine, after giving birth to her first child, said, "Becky, giving birth to my son felt miraculous. Yet women have been giving birth since the beginning of time. So why am I so overwhelmed with wonder when I look into the eyes of my baby? How do I explain this sense of awe, especially when I am an atheist?" What is wonder? Webster's dictionary defines wonder as the emotion aroused by something awe-inspiring, astounding, or marvelous. An event that is inexplicable by the laws of nature. The late renowned sociologist Peter Berger captured this idea of wonder when he wrote of signals of transcendence. According to Berger, these are phenomena that there are to be found within the domain of our natural reality, but appear to point beyond that reality. So as Oz Genuineness writes, our privilege as Christians and apologists by our lives as well as our words is to help people to hear, to listen, and to understand those signals, and then to help them follow to where they lead. If we follow the logic of that signal, they actually moves us toward faith in God. When G.K. Chesterton came to London to study at Slade School of Fine Arts, he was a convinced atheist. Everywhere he looked, he saw evidence that the world was broken and dark. What broke into this world of darkness and pessimism? The wonder of the beauty of a dandelion. It was Chesterton's experience of wonder and encountering beauty that caused him to reevaluate his atheism, and this became the catalyst that led him to become a devoted follower of Christ. But wonder is a notion that is somewhat out of fashion at present. The author Flannery O'Connor points out from Mystery and Manners, we moderns are embarrassed by wonder because wonder suggests mystery. Moderns aren't comfortable with anything we can't control or dominate or explain away. That is why prayer is so important. We must ask God to show us what might cause our skeptic friends to start to respond in wonder. It's also why asking good questions is so important, because they can gently help our friends to question their own skepticism, which may lead them to reconsider their own beliefs and become curious about what we believe. I came to know an Eastern European woman who was raised in a communist country by parents who were brilliant academics and fervent atheists. She too was an atheist and a gifted violinist. We began having a spiritual conversation, but they never seemed to go anywhere until the day I asked her this question. I'm curious, is there anything that has ever caused you to doubt your atheism? She thought for a moment and then answered, just one thing. When I play glorious, beautiful music, like Bach composition, sometimes as I play, I become so caught up that it almost feels like I am worshiping. I am transported to some other place, and I think to myself, I'm not just a physical being with biological drives. There must be more to life than what I can see. But I know that sounds crazy. Actually, I replied, I think your response is very revealing. As a musician, you probably know that Johann Sebastian Bach was a deeply committed Christian. It's why he wrote Soli Deo Gloria on every piece of music he wrote, to the glory of God alone. Bach believed that writing and performing his music was an act of worship to God. So what you need to figure out is why your head believes one thing, but your heart is saying something completely different. They both can't be right. So which of your responses is closer to what is real and true? Actually, I wish there was a God, she said. But even if God exists, I am certain God isn't interested in me or the greatest passion of my life, my music. I said, did you know there are biblical descriptions of heaven that describes a place where there is glorious music and singing and worship, which suggests that music existed before the earth was created? I believe your love for music comes from the one who created music, God himself. Several months later, I invited her along with other skeptic friends to a Bible study looking at Jesus, and she came. What was the Bible story that moved her to tears? The story of the shepherds in Luke chapter 2 who are watching their flocks at night when suddenly the heavens open up and angels speak, and there is glorious angelic praise. Though it's not entirely clear whether the angels sang or spoke their praise that first Christmas night, my friend was gripped She asked where in the Bible it described music and singing in heaven. Because of our previous conversation, I had looked up other verses just in case she asked, so I read aloud how God describes what happened when He created the world. The morning stars sang together, and all the angels shouted for joy. Job chapter 38, verses 7 through 8. I read Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17, explaining that this was a picture of when Christ returns to earth at the end of history and after the final judgment, when all believers are reunited with Christ. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with His love, and He will rejoice over you with singing. Tears sprung to her eyes again, and she said, God Himself sings? It's almost too beautiful to bear. Here's what had caused her to take Jesus' claim seriously. The reality that music is created and singing is something God does. In our evangelism, we need to answer the rational question of the mind, but we also need to show how the gospel answers our hearts as well. The gospel addresses the whole person, and so must we. It was having a baby that caused my atheist friend to wonder if there was more to life. It was playing Bach that caused my violinist friend to experience awe and to question if God might exist. Never forget these experiences of wonder are there to point us to another reality, to a deeper reality, to the one we have been searching for, perhaps unaware all along. That is why we need to ask our non-Christian friends if they have ever had any experience so profound that it caused them even momentarily to wonder if God exists. Many people answer yes to that question. Some say they think they have once experienced God's presence. Then, we have these experiences are the deepened signals of transcendence. And our task is to try to make people more aware of their human longings and desires and what their passion points to. After the last Bible study, my violinist friend said, Becky, when I discovered you were a Christian, I was determined that we'd never be friends. I loathed religion and felt believers were intellectual morons. I used every opportunity to say mocking things about Christians in your presence. What I couldn't understand was why you didn't avoid me. In fact, you actually seemed to like me. She went on, as our friendship grew, I saw that your faith wasn't mindless. You took my questions seriously, but you also asked questions that challenged my own beliefs and really made me think. Yet I wouldn't have attended the Bible study if we hadn't first established a friendship. Then she added, no one is more surprised than I am to find myself so drawn to Jesus. That truth is, I'm not the same woman I was when we first met. Many of my prejudices about Christians have subsided, and I am realizing that there are intelligent answers to some of my objections to faith. I still have doubts, and I'm not ready to become a Christian, but I definitely want to keep exploring Christianity. Could we do another Bible study? To see someone move from deep hostility to wanting to continue exploring Christianity is a cause for rejoicing. When she saw the biblical story of creation, of a creator God explained her powerful response to the beauty of music, she became increasingly open and started to take Jesus seriously. Creation is the opening act of the gospel story, and it is beautiful. So the obvious question is, how did we get from paradise to our present mess? No one doubts that our planet is in serious trouble. The challenge for all of us is how to explain the mess we are in, which is the topic of the next chapter. So I'm going to read the questions for reflections, and you guys can answer those at home on your own time. If you would like to share them with me, please do email them to me at evolvetopics@gmail.com. So question number 1, what truths about God and His creation in this chapter have most excited you? Which of the common objections discussed here do you come across most often.